friends, today we're talking about LECA. This video is going to be LECA for beginners from a LECA beginner. This is based off of my prior failure with LECA a couple of months ago, and then some tips that I got from plenty friends online and research that I've done since. Here's everything we're going to cover in this video. LECA is an acronym. It stands for Lightweight Expanded Clay Aggregate. LECA is a collection of baked clay balls that expand when you soak them in water. Unlike soil, LECA does not have any nutrients, so you're going to have to figure out a way to feed your plant in the water that you're using for LECA. A few reasons that people choose LECA over other growing mediums is number one, that it helps reduce the risk of pest, and that is because when you're using soil, it already has nutrients in it, so when it's moist, pests are more attracted to it, but with LECA, you're essentially just growing your plant in water, and it's less likely to get pests, and then when you do get pests, it's a lot easier to manage than it is when you have soil. Another reason that people like LECA is that it's a lot less messier than soil. If you're dropping a couple of clay balls, or even a lot of clay balls, it's quicker and easier to clean up than if you drop soil everywhere, or even pond. Another reason why people like LECA is that it's reusable because there's no nutrients, there's nothing in it. You can just rinse and soak and clean it again and use it again. But with soil, over time, you'll have to repot, the nutrients goes away, and if there's pests or something, you're basically gonna have to throw that soil away because it would be very hard to sanitize soil in the same way that you can sanitize LECA. Now we're gonna talk about best practices when it comes to LECA. The first thing that you want to do with your LECA is rinse it and rinse it and rinse it and rinse it. That's what I've seen in all of the videos and all of the articles that I've seen and the tips that I got from my planty friends. You have to rinse the LECA off. You can get a strainer from the Dollar Tree like I did and just take it outside and rinse it. Don't rinse it in your sinks because the clay dust can clog up your sink drainage system. So rinse it outside a couple of times. Now the next step, I saw two different versions of what you can do. You can either soak the LECA to make sure that the clay balls are expanded, and then when you put them into your plant, they're ready. Or you can boil it. Now, I chose to soak for a couple of days because that was the easiest method for me, and I didn't want to go out and buy a pot just for LECA because I'm not 100% sure that I'm going to keep a bunch of plants in LECA. I'm just trying it out and seeing if I like it. But you can also boil to do that additional sanitization, soaking up process. There are two ways that you can house your plant in LECA. The first way is to put it straight into a container. A glass container was the one that I've seen the most. So you'll put the LECA in, put your plant in, then you'll put some more LECA and you'll fill it up, maybe about this much depending on the container that you have, and your plant will essentially live in the LECA like that because the clay balls are wicking up the water to the roots of your plant. The other method that is very popular is using a clear container that has drainage holes in it and putting your LECA inside of that, the plant, then the LECA, and then having a planter pot, a catch pot for your plant, and that's where you're housing the water. So essentially it's the plant pot with water in it, the clear container that you have your plant in, and you're putting that inside of the planter pot. Now I really like this method because when you're using LECA, you are supposed to be rinsing and changing out the water frequently when you're first transitioning from my research from soil to LECA, but I'm transferring from water straight to LECA, not soil to LECA. I just don't want to risk that again. And speaking of pots, if you're gonna go with the second method, you need to make sure that it is a watertight pot, like the pots that you can grab from IKEA that have no drainage holes, which is gonna come in handy. Otherwise, you want to make sure that you're not using a terracotta pot or something that's unglazed on the inside because water is sitting in there essentially, and if it's in a pot like terracotta or something that's unglazed, it's not gonna work out well. Like I mentioned earlier, if you're transitioning from soil to LECA, you're gonna have to rinse out the LECA a few times. I think it said about every 4 to 5 days, you're gonna have to rinse out that LECA over the course of a few weeks to make sure that your plant is adjusting well from soil to LECA and you're getting out that residue from the soil. But I am transferring some water to LECA. I think I'm still going to rinse it out, maybe just not as frequently, maybe once a week.
Plant emergency. All of my LECA people, what the hell is this? Why is this black? I put this plant in here like 2 or 3 weeks ago with the nutrient water. Why is it black? Help.
As you can tell from the video, my first experience with LECA was not good at all, and I'm gonna tell you what I did wrong. The first thing I did wrong that made it a lot more challenging and why I had the results that I did is that I transferred from soil straight to LECA. Now you'll see later in the video, I'll talk about why it's easier to transition from soil to water to LECA, but I went straight from soil to LECA. Now what's challenging about that is the fact that there can still be soil residue even if you rinse it off as much as you possibly can, which I feel like I didn't do a great job of rinsing off that soil, and that's why my water turned the color that it did. Now we can get into nutrients. So nutrients is a really big thing with LECA, and from the research that I have done, general hydroponics is the way to go for adding nutrients to your plant while it is growing in LECA. Now I'm only transferring 2 or 3 plants into LECA, so the cost of general hydroponics, I didn't feel it was worth the investment for me right now because I'm only transferring a small amount of plants, and I know the nutrients is gonna help the plants grow big and beautiful, but right now I just wanna see if I can even maintain the way that LECA is, so I'm opting for vitamins. Now vitamins and nutrients are completely different, and I'll do a whole separate video on that, but for me, I have vitamins on hand. I use Thrive. I have it on hand, and that's what I'm going to use, and not necessarily instead of, but it's just what I have on hand, and I'm going to see if that makes a difference or not, because essentially the plant is growing in water. It's not necessarily having a dramatic change because I'm using the water to LECA method, and I will just see in a couple of weeks if I want to continue switching plants over to LECA. But right now, this is what I'm gonna do, and this is what I have on hand, and I didn't want to make any big investments around LECA right now. I just want to try it out. I have 3 plants that I'm going to be transitioning from water to LECA. The first one is my Monstera deliciosa cutting. It's been living in water for about 6 months, and it's a really easy plant, so I'm excited to see what happens with it. It's been thriving in water alone, so I think the LECA and adding the vitamin water is gonna make it even better. The next plant I'm transferring is a Rhaphidophora tetrasperma cutting that I originally had put in LECA from that very first time that I tried, and I did it terribly wrong from soil to LECA. I had to transfer that back to water, and then I had it back in soil. It was in soil, it really wasn't loving it, so I had transferred it to water a couple of weeks ago, and then I decided, hey, I'm gonna put it in LECA. I have some LECA, let's try it out. I have nothing to lose at this point. And the last plant that I'm gonna transfer to LECA is a Cebu Blue cutting that has been growing in water for a couple of months. I have a ton of Cebu Blue. I always have Cebu Blue. It's my favorite plant. I have a million of them. So I'm excited to see what this plant is going to actually look like. Now let's get into the process of transferring from water to LECA. The first thing I did was rinse and rinse and rinse and rinse my LECA outside with the strainer that I got from the Dollar Tree. Then I filled up a little clear bucket that I had with the LECA, and filled it up with water, and it's been soaking for the past couple of days. It's just sitting on my counter in my kitchen, which I am glad to finally empty the container and move it from my kitchen counter. These are a few accounts that I really liked and looked to for LECA information and inspiration. The first one is Caitlin Louise. Their YouTube is Plant Life in the Tropics, and I'll link it below in the description box. And Caitlin Louise also on TikTok, and two other creators on TikTok that I liked their LECA videos, and they gave me some great tips for LECA when I had my first failure a couple months ago, were Nicole and Eat Plant Lab, and I will link those below as well. Make sure to follow me on TikTok and Instagram so that you can see my entire LECA journey, and I will give updates on there, as well as do a 1 month update on plants in LECA so you can see exactly what happened and if I did something right, if I did something wrong. Also, if you are a LECA person, you love LECA, drop some information in the comments below so that everybody can share the information of LECA on this journey, and I will see you in the next video.